We now have a two-tier legal system, James,
Oh, yes.
whereby white men will be treated harsher now under British law, James.
Well, yeah, it's really, really shocking, this. Basically now they have put in this system whereby pre-sentencing reports, which basically automatically take into account your race, your gender, your circumstance, all of that to mitigate the sentences that you might get for whatever crime you're alleged to have committed and been brought before the courts and convicted of. That now means essentially that white Britons are going to get the worst treatment when it comes to sentencing.
The UK has always seen itself as a country that protects freedom and fairness, values that have shaped its identity for centuries. But recently, many people feel that things are starting to change. JD Vance, known for his outspoken views on politics, has raised concerns that Britain may be moving away from these core principles. And he's not alone. Growing numbers of people across the nation share the same unease. A big point of debate is the shift in the justice system. New sentencing rules now consider factors such as race, gender, and personal background. Supporters believe this helps address long-standing inequalities, but critics argue it could undermine the idea that justice should treat everyone equally, warning that fairness might be giving way to identity politics. Vance has spoken out on related issues before. He's criticized the UK's immigration approach, saying open borders make it harder to keep citizens safe. Now, with these new changes to the legal system, even more people are starting to wonder, is Britain staying true to its traditions, or is it drifting away from them? Before we continue, if you're enjoying this video, make sure to hit like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more updates on the biggest shifts in British politics. All right, let's get back into it.
This is the two-tier justice system. This is why they call Keir Starmer two-tier Keir. And I'll tell you something, guys, but the other point...
Even Keir Starmer recognises what a catastrophe this is.
Yeah.
Disappointed in this response, and the Lord Chancellor is obviously continuing to engage on this, and we're considering our response. And you know, all options are on the table, but I am disappointed at this outcome, and now we'll have to consider what we do as a result.
Oh, I don't know, if only there was a Prime Minister who cared about the issue could do something. You're the Prime Minister, Keir. I mean, he's acting like he's just some dude off the street who's a little bit aggrieved.
Yes.
Now let's look at how Labour leader Keir Starmer fits into this debate. The UK's new sentencing system has sparked a lot of controversy. Under the new rules, pre-sentencing reports take into account things like a person's race, gender, and background before deciding punishment. The idea is to fix past wrongs and address discrimination in the justice system, but many people are worried about what this means for fairness. Critics argue that, while the system is meant to create balance, it could actually tip the scales the other way. Some fear it may lead to lighter sentences for certain minority groups, while others, such as white Britons, might face harsher penalties for the same crimes. This has fueled claims that justice in the UK is no longer blind. Instead of being judged only by their actions, people may now be judged partly by who they are. Opponents say this goes against one of the most basic principles of justice, that everyone should be treated equally under the law. Even U.S. Senator JD Vance has warned that this shift could create a two-tier justice system, where the same crime results in different outcomes depending on a person's identity. For many, this raises a troubling question. Is true justice still possible in Britain today?
Ridiculous. But James, the reality is what they have literally done is brought in laws whereby if you are any of those identity politics groups, women, gays, of ethnic whatever origin, anything other than a white man must be treated more leniently. So by definition, white men will be treated harsher under the British legal system.
And we'll just be really frank about what we're talking about here. We're talking about, basically people of color, people of different religions getting a lighter sentence and a lighter treatment. And so this means, a lot of migrants who might commit crime, they're going to get a lighter treatment than somebody who is a Briton committing the same crime. That's shocking. Keir Starmer, I don't trust anything he has said there about claiming that he's distressed about that, because, this is the same guy who saw his opinion numbers absolutely plummet and then started talking about, oh, maybe we have to do something about immigration. Really, Keir? Really? Okay, fine. Now you tell us.
Keir Starmer recently claimed that free speech is alive and well in the UK, but U.S. Senator JD Vance strongly disagrees. He argues that free speech is slowly being eroded, hidden behind the justification of hate speech laws. While Starmer presents an optimistic view, Vance insists the reality is more troubling. He believes these laws are increasingly being used to silence dissent and shut down open debate. According to him, Starmer is either ignoring the problem or choosing not to confront it for political gain. The real concern isn't just about stopping genuinely harmful speech, it's about where the line is drawn. The difference between hateful content and personal opinion is becoming less clear, and as that line blurs, the government has more power to punish people simply for expressing their views. Vance's warnings reflect a wider unease about the future of free expression in Britain. Yet Starmer seems unwilling to even admit there's an issue, and for many, that silence is deeply unsettling.
But the thing, too, the other week, there was that phenomenal speech that JD Vance gave at the European Union, where he called out Britain, and he called out Europe, but he called out Britain in particular and said that Britain, which was a bastion of liberty, has no longer become that, and they are straying very far away from that. And the real point is that if America is going to go and defend liberal democracies, and you want to be defended, you've got to act like a liberal democracy. And Britain has strayed so far from the centuries. It took centuries for Britain to develop the traditions of law and liberty that we enjoy as well. And now they're torching them at a rate of knots.
Under the UK's new sentencing guidelines, many are worried that white Britons could end up facing harsher punishments than others. These new rules take factors like race and gender into account when deciding sentences, meaning a person's background could influence how severe their punishment is. While the goal of these changes might be to address past injustices, the reality has raised concerns. By treating people differently based on who they are, we risk undermining one of the core principles of the justice system: equality under the law. Justice is supposed to be blind, fair, and impartial, no matter a person's race, gender, or background. But for many, it now feels like the system is moving away from that ideal. Instead of focusing on what someone did, the system seems more concerned with who they are. This shift doesn't just create confusion, it creates division. Even more troubling, it weakens the very idea of fairness that the justice system is supposed to represent.
This undermines the most basic principle of our justice system. That justice is blind, that everyone's equal under the law, that you're not going to get preferential treatment based on who you are. And we already see it happening even before this formal recognition that it's happening. We have seen it over and over again with people getting ridiculously lenient sentences and then having people in the UK locked up for being in an anti-immigration protest, even if they weren't guilty of anything that was approaching violence, but they were at a violent protest, so they were guilty by association. Same thing doesn't happen with these pro-Palestinian protests.
Under the new sentencing rules, migrants and minority groups may receive lighter punishments than others. The updated guidelines consider factors like race and background, which can sometimes lead to more lenient sentences for certain people. Supporters argue that this is a step toward fixing long-standing inequalities in the justice system. But others believe it's unfair. They argue that people should be judged on what they did, not who they are. Critics warn that this approach could harm social unity. When people feel that justice isn't being applied equally, it can cause frustration and deepen divisions between communities. The idea that justice should be blind, treating everyone equally, seems to be at risk. If this continues, it could lead to more mistrust and resentment across society.
Most concerningly, I look to our very dear friends, the United Kingdom, where the backslide away from conscience rights has placed the basic liberties of religious Britons in particular in the crosshairs. A little over 2 years ago, the British government charged Adam Smith Connor, a 51-year-old physiotherapist and an Army veteran, with the heinous crime of standing 50 meters from an abortion clinic and silently praying for 3 minutes. Not obstructing anyone, not interacting with anyone, just silently praying on his own. And after British law enforcement spotted him and demanded to know what he was praying for, Adam replied simply, it was on behalf of the unborn son he and his former girlfriend had aborted years before. Now, the officers were not moved. Adam was found guilty of breaking the government's new buffer zones law, which criminalizes silent prayer and other actions that could influence a person's decision within 200 meters of an abortion facility. He was sentenced to pay thousands of pounds in legal costs to the prosecution. Now, I wish I could say that this was a fluke, a one-off crazy example of a badly written law being enacted against a single person. But no, this last October, just a few months ago, the Scottish government began distributing letters to citizens whose houses lay within so-called safe access zones, warning them that even private prayer within their own homes may amount to breaking the law. Naturally, the government urged readers to report any fellow citizens suspected guilty of thought crime. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat.
Keir Starmer's stance on immigration and border control has been inconsistent. At times, he's supported more open borders and relaxed policies, only to change his position when public opinion shifted. This back and forth has raised questions about how much he really believes in his own approach to the issue. One of his strongest critics, JD Vance, has called him out for not taking a clear stand on border security. Vance accuses Starmer of trying to please everyone without actually addressing the concerns of regular citizens. Vance argues that Starmer seems out of touch with people who are genuinely worried about the impact of uncontrolled immigration on jobs, public services, and national security.
For being in an anti-immigration protest.
Instead of directly addressing these issues, Starmer appears more focused on playing political games and appealing to activists rather than listening to the wider public.
Same thing doesn't happen with these pro-Palestinian
protests. For many, this constant flip-flopping only reinforces the belief that he's not in touch with the real problems people are facing.
We're not immune from it. It's happening right here.
JD Vance hasn't held back when criticizing the UK's recent direction. He's particularly worried about what he sees as a move away from the country's long-standing commitment to liberal democratic values. One of his main concerns is the UK's weakening approach to border security, something he believes is essential for a nation's sovereignty and stability. In Vance's eyes, Britain, once admired as a symbol of freedom and the rule of law, is drifting from its core values. He argues that political correctness and a softer stance on justice have taken priority over the strong principles that used to define the country. For Vance, the inability to secure the nation's borders isn't just a policy mistake. It's a warning that the UK is losing its identity and control over its future. And he's not alone in feeling this way. Many people in the UK are increasingly frustrated with how immigration is being handled. Public opinion shows a growing demand for stronger border control, driven by concerns about social unity and economic stability. Vance's message has resonated with those who feel Britain has lost its way, and they're calling for a return to more decisive leadership.
That there have been infringements on free speech that actually affect not just the British, of course what the British do in their own country is up to them, but also affect American technology companies and by extension American citizens. So that is something that we'll talk about today at lunch.
We've had free speech for a very, very long time in the United Kingdom, and it will last for a very, very long time. But no, I mean, certainly we wouldn't want to reach across US citizens, and we don't, and that's absolutely right. But in relation to free speech in the UK, I'm very proud of our history there.
For a long time, the idea that justice is blind has been a key principle of the UK's legal system. It was meant to ensure that everyone is treated equally under the law, no matter their race, gender, or background. But now, that principle is starting to fade with the rise of identity-based sentencing. Personal factors like someone's race, gender, or life circumstances are starting to influence how harsh or lenient their punishment is. While the intention behind this might be to fix past wrongs, it ends up creating a new kind of bias. Instead of treating everyone equally, the system starts giving certain groups special treatment based on who they are. This is a problem because fairness and equality should be the foundation of justice. If the law doesn't apply the same to everyone, what's left of justice? For many, this shift feels like we're moving away from a society that values impartiality, where everyone, regardless of their background, is held to the same standard. And it's not just happening in the UK, the same trend is unfolding in the US, where policies are starting to prioritize identity over the rule of law. These changes are causing concern on both sides of the Atlantic, especially as they affect not only how justice is served, but also how freely people can speak. Australia is starting to head down a similar path, with new hate speech laws and identity-based policies. This isn't just a local issue, it's becoming a global shift. More and more countries are moving away from traditional values that focus on the individual toward an approach that prioritizes group identity. This could have serious consequences, not just for individual rights, but for the social unity that holds diverse societies together.
Mr. Speaker, we've been preparing for all eventualities ahead of the confirmation of US tariffs later today. Let me be clear with the House. A trade war is in nobody's interests. And the country deserves, and we will take, a calm, pragmatic approach. That's why constructive talks are progressing to agree a wider economic prosperity deal with the US. That's why we're working with all industries and sectors likely to be impacted. Our decisions will always be guided by our national interest, and that's why we have prepared for all eventualities, and we will rule nothing out.
The UK's shift away from its core liberal values is worrying. Many people, including JD Vance, believe this change is weakening the basic principles of fairness, justice, and national security. And with countries like the US and Australia heading in a similar direction, the global impact is becoming harder to ignore. It's time for a serious conversation about the future of liberal democracies and whether they can still uphold the values they were built on. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this video interesting, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content on the big changes shaping our world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.